All right, boys. So let's get into a few of the trending topics of the week. So on Wednesday, we had FTR, formerly known as the Revival, making their not so surprising debut. I think everyone,
long-awaited, shocking.
Everyone and their mama saw this coming. Yeah, I don't think anyone was even trying to hide this. There was a bunch of teasers for this in the last couple of weeks on being the elite, little clues and stuff. So how did you think it went? Did you see it?
I saw it. I love them driving into the arena, jumping out. It felt like back in the day. I love the look with the leather jackets. I thought they looked badass. The interaction was a little off for me. They teased like being friendly with Matt and Nick, and then went for the awkward little handshake, turn around, walk away. It was a little awkward, I'll say that. But it's exciting because I'm sure they're going to click right away, have some epic-ass matches, and the chemistry will be there, I'm sure. So I can't wait.
Yeah, I thought they looked really, really cool. That was a cool-ass freaking truck. And they drove in. I think they executed that better than Cody. Like, they drove in all crazy. Like, you could tell who was driving because he's a good-ass driver. he whipped that, yo. He pulled up. I was like, oh!
Dash Wheeler.
The brakes perfectly.
Yo, that, and, super cool truck. They looked really, really cool. Which the Revival are not necessarily known for looking cool. They're known for, being great workers. They looked really cool. I was like, oh shit. Who are these cool guys with skinny jeans and leather jackets and thought haircuts?
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. Yeah, there was, the interaction was awkward, but I like that they're not rushing into anything. Let's not. If fans would have been in the building, they would have been greeted as baby faces. There would be no boos. I think you start them off as baby faces if you want to. You can keep them as baby faces also if you want. I think they'll work better as heels, down the long run. But it's better to break the hearts of the fans eventually. Start them off. Everybody's gonna, wants to see them. Everyone, really appreciates their work. So.
I might prefer it in reverse.
What, the heels? The Bucks turning heel?
Yeah, only because I enjoy the Bucks being heel. So I might like it. I would prefer it in reverse.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't think you need to rush this. I think you can let it play out.
Yeah.
If it makes sense to turn the Bucks heel, the Elite doesn't have to last forever. It can be forever in your heart or whatever. But it's going to be more fun when they all break up and start doing their own things. And some of them are baby faces and some of them are heels. And, they don't have to feud with each other. But, if it makes more sense for the Bucks to be heels, which they are better heels than baby faces for me. I really like when they're annoying and bothering everybody and making fun of everybody and, being jerks. But, I hope they don't rush into their match. I hope when they meet, I hope it's way down the road. When fans get back.
I mean, when it regards to FTR, if I refer to them by their Christian names, the Revival, please forgive me. But their entrance, I mean, a lot of this setup was whatever. Again, I know that. I try to keep up, at times with the website. So I did know that they were teasing them in the Be the Elite show. Again, I'm not a big fan of all of the internet things that AEW does, because what it does is at times is that it actually takes away some of their best material from the Dynamite show, because some of the things that they can tease on TV, they don't, because they're trying to bring eyeballs to. They're attracting a different audience into their internet shows that may not necessarily be part of the Dynamite audience. So, and I'm one of those people. So I don't watch Be the Elite. I don't watch AEW Dark. I watch Dynamite, and I think that's where their stuff should be on. You know, when it came to, you know, the Revival's entrance, FTR's entrance, you know, I laughed because I'm like, I saw this entrance 2 weeks ago. I saw the exact same thing. So I thought to myself, I'm like, way to go for creativity. Like, I was like, you could have done it. Could have, something else could have been done for that. I will agree, they did look cool. They came out of there and they looked like two badasses. And the thing that really gets me with in AEW is those two guys, you know, in all honesty, I mean, you know, there's a few, but I honestly believe that the Revival are probably the best tag team in pro wrestling right now, because everything that they do is exceptionally believable. They understand the fundamentals of tag team wrestling, and they, whether they're working heel or babyface, it doesn't matter. They understand the psychology of what their role is in the match. The interaction was very, very awkward because of the fact that, of course, you know, and I say this all the time, in AEW, outside of MJF, there are no heels. There are no heels in AEW. Even the guys who are trying to pretend to be heels don't do it well enough. They're not convincing. So outside of MJF, there are no heels in AEW. It's either baby faces or, you know, whatever. You know, like, I'm not going to call them tweeners, because even tweeners have, you know, some kind of an edge to them. A lot of these guys are very nondescript in terms of where their allegiance lies. So when they come out, they're coming out and they beat up, you know, they beat up Blade and Butcher. And I remember when I looked at that, and I just thought to myself, like, these poor guys are just always the cannon fodder for everybody in AEW. And I'm like, and this is that's one of those teams, realistically, that if you wanted to, could be a really good, you know, upper mid card tag team that could be a tag team that is not just getting beat up by, you know, all the top guys. You know, I just thought that was really poorly done. Part of the issue here is that when it comes to FTR against the Young Bucks, everybody wants to see that match. The thing is that right now there are no stakes. And what I mean by that is, realistically, the stakes should be the tag team titles. Now, if we knew that FTR was coming in, you know, however many months ago when they left WWE, if AEW already knew that they were on their way in, obviously with the pandemic, there's only so much you can do, but it's a matter of, at some point, the titles have got to come off Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, because realistically, what you want to do is, realistically, the Young Bucks should be the tag team champions, you know, because you want to be able to give FTR something to shoot for, and then you got to have clear definitions. Who is the heel? Who's the babyface? There has to be a very clear definition. It cannot be ambiguous between these two teams, because the more ambiguous that is, the less effective the match is going to be once they get together. What I mean by that is that you got to tell the story. Meaning, if FTR are going to be portrayed as baby faces and they're chasing the heel champions, then what has to happen with FTR is they have to come in, and then you start putting them in tag team matches. Obviously, you're not going to put them against Butcher and Blade, but you'll put them against either makeshift teams or lower level teams that they can just keep feeding them. You raise up that record, because again, even though for wrestling fans who watch WWE, you know, in the Revival's best moments, they are the best tag team in the WWE. Now that they come to AEW, they're going to be presented, hopefully, much more serious than a lot of the other acts that they present in AEW. So to present them as such, you want to make sure that they're winning, and that they're winning convincingly. If the Young Bucks are the champions, obviously the Young Bucks would have to, you know, be defending the titles against other teams, but you have to have other teams that kind of get in between them throughout that time. So right now, AEW has a lot of tag teams, but unfortunately none of them are really over as like people that you can say, oh my God, if I beat XYZ team, that's really impressive. They just have a lot of teams that are kind of like in the same level, you know, where they're just kind of like in the middle, nondescript, you know, some might be face, some might be heel. I think probably the only two teams that may be the most descript are Jurassic Express and Best Friends. And both of them, at least for my flavor, both of them are like pseudo comedy teams. I think Best Friends is designed that way, I think, a little bit. Jurassic Express is not, but it just kind of comes across that way. But everybody else is just kind of like, you know, in the middle. So I think that with FTR, if you want to present them, whether heels or baby faces, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that you present them strongly. with the Young Bucks, at some point, that match should be about the tag team championship. So whether you put the belts on FTR and they beat Hangman and Omega, or if it's the Young Bucks, it doesn't matter. But the tag team title should really be part of this, because if you're going to talk about within the eyes of the AEW audience saying, hey, the Young Bucks are the best tag team in the world, and now they're facing the guys that can probably give them the best challenge, tag team titles have got to be on the line. It can't be about bragging rights. The titles have got to be on the line.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree with you with a lot, but in some aspects, like I feel like the tag team division is really the meat and potatoes of AEW right now. They may not have top tier teams as compared to FTR or Matt and Nick, but you're talking about the upper echelon, probably the two best tag teams in the world. But I think what AEW does so good is that they build up everybody around the obvious studs. So the Young Bucks have competed in matches with a bunch of other tag teams and brought them along. So I don't think we'll have to force the tag titles in this interaction currently. I don't even think they're going to touch each other for a while until we get fans, which is better.
Of course.
But I do agree that FTR should win convincingly against all the other tag teams. But the Young Bucks have done a really good job of bringing up a bunch of other tag teams. And back to my other point, AEW's done a great job by keeping the belts away from the obvious Kenny, Cody, and the Young Bucks, which is probably what the fans want, but it's not what we need right now. And I've been a fan of that. That's what they've done right out the gate in the past year.
I have no issue with people, feeling that, hey, keep the belts away from the obvious guys. My position has always been is that if it's not going to be the obvious guys, it's either you have to have somebody in the pipeline who you really think is going to be, the team or the guy that can do it in the interim, or you're gonna have to build these guys along. My position with the Young Bucks has been is that even though the Young Bucks have lost to a lot of teams in AEW, have done the job, I don't think that they've really gotten anybody over, because the way that the Bucks have lost has not been. It's always been meant to give the other team a win, but that the Young Bucks don't look like they got beat. It almost always looks like a fluke. They did it with Private Party. That Private Party is the biggest example that I can think of in that tag team tournament where they didn't. That could have been a staple win for Private Party, and it ended up being a fluke win for them. And however many months later, I don't know, this 8 months later or whatever it's been, Private Party is basically working nondescript matches instead of being a team that is being presented as like, hey, this is one of our, really hot up and coming teams. They've beaten these guys, and, establishing their moves, establishing their moveset. So in that regard, again, I think that, the Young Bucks versus FTR is inevitable. It's going to happen. I do agree it should happen with an audience, because the AEW audience is going to eat it up. I would like to see that match again. My position has always been is I'm always looking for a team that can slow these guys down, and I'm not talking about slow them down to a crawl. I'm talking about make the match make sense and not just have it be flips and dives and endless super kicks, but a match that psychologically makes sense, makes all four guys look good, and that ultimately does wonders for AEW's profile and also does wonders for both teams, because then once they get separated, whoever they work with next, whether, particularly if the other teams beat them, then they all come up with them.
Yeah.
Wednesday night, we also had a main event segment that featured Mike Tyson, and and what's crazy is he had a lot of star power with him. I guess he's training with these guys. What camp is that, Chris? Do you know? There's Rashad Evans and Cejudo.
Triple C. It was a weird combo. I saw a picture on Instagram of him pretty much training with them. He was
he's been training with them. But these were big stars. I didn't even notice Rashad Evans, who's a pretty big MMA star, former champ.
I'm sure Vince is rolling over in his grave. Dana! What the hell is this? I'm sure he's livid.
Oh
I
Lord.
mean, either way, this is what you kind of get when you get Mike Tyson. I felt scared. I was like, Mike Tyson's gonna lose his mind. He's gonna hit somebody for real.
Yeah.
Every time Mike Tyson has been in a ring in his career, like in a wrestling ring, he's done it like 4 or 5 times now. I always think that
He's gonna do whatever he
go off
wants.
script. He's gonna
Yeah.
hit somebody. Someone's gonna look at him wrong. I cannot believe that this man, who's over 50 now, and he's so soft spoken and he seems so nice when he does interviews, but he still has a little edge to him. He still has enough crazy left in him that you go, is this gonna go off the rail? He's gonna hit some. He's gonna kill somebody. He might
Yeah.
kill somebody. I mean, I don't know. This was this. I was just worried. I was just worried that he was gonna shoot on on Jericho. What do you do with this? Let's say how do you use Mike Tyson if you could have him one more time with working with Jericho? What do you do? How do you make the best of this, the most of this?
I have no clue. I prefer they don't do it. It's cool to see Mike Tyson, but realistically, what is Jericho gonna do to him? It's not believable. I would have rather have seen him. I mean, it makes sense the Jericho being the mouthpiece, but realistically, it's not believable. I really don't know what they could do. Maybe an arm wrestling match, maybe ping pong. Some take it from WWE's textbook.
We're gonna be the
What they're doing.
Viking Raiders and Street Profits.
Exactly. Maybe do that, but I don't see how you can't have a match. You can't box him. I really don't know where this is going.
I mean, this segment, you know, that segment on Wednesday night was just, again, the segment was awful, but it's because of the fact that they're trying to do too many things in one segment, meaning that whole segment with the Inner Circle pep rally was just, it was just doomed from the beginning. You know, it's like, again, they have the cheerleaders, you know, I guess the Jacksonville Jaguar cheerleaders is like, well, you know, we're not cheering at football games.
Yeah, nothing else to do.
We might as well get paid to do something. And then you have Vicky Guerrero, you know, God bless her, but it's just like having her there, particularly based on storylines and whatever position, just it was just silly.
Yeah.
All five guys come out and they all cut, you know, these really silly promos. And again, I'm always of the essence that you can be funny and you can do things that are silly if it's natural to your character, and you can do it in the context of a storyline to either draw babyface or heel heat with whatever you're there to do. None of it was accomplished. None of it. It
almost felt like Mike Tyson's like, I'll do one more night. Fuck it. What you guys got for me? And they're like, actually.
I mean, of course. And I mean, listen, you know, the thing about it is Mike Tyson's a huge wrestling fan. So, you know, to have Tony Khan come to him and say, hey, Mike, would you be willing to do us, you know, another show for AEW? He's a huge wrestling fan. Of course he's going to do it. He's having a good time. The thing about it is that when Jericho says, hey, I want Mike Tyson, and then he references what happened 10 years ago on Monday Night Raw, it's, again, I kind of rolled my eyes because I just thought to myself, I understand that it's Chris Jericho's story and Mike Tyson knocked him out. It doesn't matter whether it's in WWE or anywhere else. It doesn't matter. The thing is, for the context of the storyline, I'm like, hey, couldn't have, you know, y'all recorded something, you know, let's say after the stadium stampede match, you guys are all walking back to the you know, walking through the tunnels and whatever have you, and then you have an interaction with Tyson and maybe a few of his people. Tyson does like the Lawrence Taylor thing with Bam Bam Bigelow. You know, you see him kind of laughing a little bit, but then he wants to shake his hand, and then Jericho gets in his face. You record that interaction, and there you have a story that is AEW centered, and then you can use that to tell that story. And then if Jericho wants to reference what happened 10 years ago, he can. But it's all a matter of they use that piece to focus it, and I'm like, this is dumb. Again, you know, within the AEW program this past week, so much of what there were too many WWE references. too many little jabs, too many little stabs at WWE, or other podcasters or other people that may have been criticizing the AEW pay-per-view. And I'm like, that the show is not the forum for you to do that on. Do that on your AEW podcasts. Do that on your own personal podcast. The show's not for that. Because for me, I roll my eyes and I'm like, yo, seriously, man, like, don't do that. It's stupid. Now, when the thing is with Vic saying, hey, there's a whole bunch of star power, the only person that I knew was Henry Cejudo, only because I know that he recently fought in a UFC fight and then announced his retirement. So he's the only guy in that crew that I really recognized. And they don't mention names. It's just like, it's again, there's this implied understanding that the audience knows who these people are. And for me, I'm an MMA novice. Like, I peripherally know MMA, and I might know like the really, really big stars, but the people who are stars to the MMA audience and are not mainstream fighters, I have no idea who they are. Those guys could walk past
They
me.
did mention the names. They mentioned the names of all of them except for Rashad Evans.
So
yeah,
it's and it's one of those things where that whole segment got out of control. And it's true what you said, Chris. There's no possible way that a physical interaction between Chris Jericho and Mike Tyson could happen that would be believable. One is because, do I believe that Chris Jericho could physically handle himself against Mike Tyson? No, not at all. In a shoot fight, absolutely not. Can Mike Tyson work a wrestling match with Chris Jericho? No, absolutely.
Hell no.
So
the only way this ends is obviously Mike Tyson knocking him out.
Well, here's the way that this could probably work for both sides. I know that I read something earlier about the possibility of a Mike Tyson Evander Holyfield 3 fight, meaning that Chris Jericho can latch himself onto Evander Holyfield's corner as a gimmick. I don't know if that would happen, but let's just say that'd be the case. Or have a situation where Mike Tyson can be the corner man for whoever AEW really wants to elevate up the card and get a really big win against Chris Jericho. I don't know who the ideal candidate could be, because it cannot be one of the, it can't be like the Orange Cassidys or the Orange Cassidys and types of the world. It can't be that guy, because it has to be somebody who you can seriously present, because if Mike Tyson's going to be with him, it's going to make Mike Tyson look bad, and it's not going to elevate, the AEW performer. It's not going to elevate them. So it's a matter of, there are some creative ways to go about it, but if they're talking about doing some kind of a one-on-one type match between the two, no, maybe a tag team match where you could pair Mike Tyson up with a good up and coming strong baby face, team him up with a Cody, team him up with a Dustin or some, I named those two guys because they're really good workers, but I don't know, a Jungle Boy.
Ultimately, this is a I don't know.
Well, the reason why is because I think that AEW is they're trying to sow the seeds to a storyline that doesn't seem to have a straight. It doesn't seem to have a smooth path to conclusion, and that could be problematic for them in their booking, because if they're trying to start something and don't know how they want it to finish.
One thing I'll say is that I'm sure they have storylines written for weeks at a time. So I'm sure once this opportunity presented to them, they already knew what they were going to do. Unlike WWE, who it feels like they're planning week to week.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I can definitely give a reason. With WWE, a lot of times it can just be a matter of how much programming they crank out, and again, it's a matter of when you have so many hours of programming that you're trying to put together, that at times it can be difficult.
That's true too.
They should be able to plan stories out and say, hey, we have a storyline that's supposed to end on XYZ date. Pick it, pay-per-view, whatever. And then let's trace it back to the beginning. I think that in at least last week's programming and what I saw tonight on Raw seems to be moving in that direction, where it seems like now the shows have a little more. There seems to be some level of continuity, and they're sticking to certain storyline, and they're not. It doesn't seem like they're breaking them too far apart. So
I'll say I appreciate
there's hope there.
I appreciate AEW doing something like this without fans in the crowd, because ideally you would want people in the seats if Mike Tyson's showing up. But it does feel like they're doing too much at one time. But I appreciate the effort of, still trying to entertain us.
Of course.
During the pandemic.
Of course. I mean, that's all we can only give them credit for that.
Yeah.
Well, once upon a time, Mike Tyson was the most dangerous man in the world. So let's talk a little bit about the most dangerous woman in the world.
Well, there's your transition, Vic. You can't even do it with a
Good
straight
job,
face.
Vic. What a segue.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, you probably didn't see Raw, but Nia Jax managed to poor Kairi Sane, grab her, throw against the steps, and bust her open for a shoot. But before that even happened, the WWE decided to ban the buckle bomb because I guess after Seth Rollins injured a few people, if you don't remember, he injured Sting and ended his career, and he injured Finn when he did it wasn't a buckle bomb. It was the same move, but on the guardrail, was it?
Yeah, on the guard wall, because it's not a guardrail.
Yeah, on the guard wall. And he tore his shoulder, right?
Yeah, shoulder popped right out.
Yeah. So and then after what happened with Nia, I guess they just said, "Fuck it, get rid of this move." How do you feel about companies getting rid of moves? Should they get rid of the move, or is Nia really to blame for being such a horrible worker? I don't know. What do you think?
I personally am always scared when I see a buckle bomb. Just because the person on the receiving end of it is basically blind. They're going backwards. It's all around a scary move. Granted, most of the shit that's being done in the ring is scary. There's a lot of times I see people backflip and land on their feet, and I'm like in pain just watching it. But the buckle bomb, I don't know if it's not really an effective move. I don't love to see it as much. I'd prefer for something else to be done there anyway. And if it's dependent upon the safety of the athletes, I'm on that end of the spectrum. What I will say is that if Nia Jax is the culprit of these injuries consistently, maybe she should be the one not doing it. If everyone else still has it in their moveset, maybe she should just take it out. Stop doing it all together.
If you look at this move, I don't like when moves are necessarily banned. But this, even Seth, who's a really, really good worker, hurts people with this move. You probably shouldn't do this move. I don't like moves where your head gets to flail around, right? You get that whiplash effect. If you bump straight on the mat, at least the mat is straight. Your head's not necessarily loose, right? So you go completely flat.
Yep.
When you hit a buckle, your shoulders hit the buckle, your head's gonna just go, back and forth aggressively. It's like being in a car crash. It's like getting kicked. Really, it's like remember when was it Paige that got kicked really, really hard in the back?
By Sasha.
Sasha, and her head completely whiplashed. Anytime you get hit in the back like that, and your head has nowhere to go, those moves probably shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't be done by anyone.
No, and realistically, with WWE, for them to put the kibosh on this move and ban it, listen. In all honesty, I'm okay with WWE doing this again. You got to look at it from a couple of perspectives. One is that the buckle bomb is it's kind of an unpredictable move, because even when you take it correctly, and that is shoulders are on hit the top turnbuckle, your head still goes back, because the thing about there's nothing to stop your head. So and it's not meant for your head to hit the buckle, because if it does, you're gonna knock yourself out. So again, Seth Rollins has done it, 1,000 times, and with those two notable exceptions, no one's been hurt. When Nia Jax did it to Kairi Sane, again, it's a matter of Nia Jax being, 250 pounds, and she's wrestling girls who are, in the case of Kairi Sane, if she weighs more than 110 pounds, I'd have a hard time believing that. So you got to be very, very careful when you're Nia Jax working against women who, there really are no exceptions. They're all smaller than her. And, minimum is probably somewhere in that 60, 70 pounds smaller range. So, and it goes up to 100, 150 pounds in some instances. So it's a matter of her being, easier to work with. And again, WWE is a publicly traded company. They can't be having situations where their wrestlers, their performers can get injured in the ring, especially, and again, it's not that their shareholders are telling them what to do about the wrestling content, but these are all things that they have to look at. And these performers are there, and the performers are the biggest asset that WWE has. If the performers get hurt and the wrestlers get hurt, then they got no show. So if it means that for safety reasons that they got to ban the move, I'm totally for it.
Okay, so then on SmackDown, they pretty much announced that Matt Riddle is, coming up to the main roster, and it looks like it's not just him, because rumor has it that Dijakovic is also coming up. Is it too soon for Dijakovic? I don't know if he was going to really do anything notable in NXT. Maybe it makes sense to bring him up. What do you think?
It's a little concerning for NXT if they're losing two studs with not enough top guys to carry the load, I guess. But depends how much they prioritize NXT versus Friday nights, which is probably the biggest cash cow after the Fox payday. So if the viewers are declining on there, it's time to bring up some talent and get some attention for Friday. So I'm okay with it. I like both guys a lot. They're great workers, and I'm excited to see them mix it up with the likes of fucking Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles. Yeah, I'm for it. It hurts NXT, but Friday nights is where they need to make the money.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is, no matter what they tell you, this is the whole purpose for NXT, is to get these guys ready and to bring them up. So I think they still have enough talent. People just need to step up. Those people that are not being used, they need to do what Velveteen Dream did. Figure it out. Get your character going. Get over. Get over. Now, Dijakovic, he's probably more upper mid card down there, which means he'll probably do the same up here, unless they see him. He's super tall. He's tall, but he's tall and apparently heavy, but he looks really thin when I watch him. I'm like,
he works really thin too.
Yeah. So, and he has the same problem Keith Lee has. He's like he went to the school of, like, it's like a big time performance, like Broadway style wrestling. Like, he does the feast your eyes, and I don't necessarily like that. I think it's a little corny, a little forced. It's forced. It's like, is that necessary? It's not working. It's not really over for me. But I think he'll do well. He's a big guy, he can work. Those guys always do well. Riddle, I think, is gonna kill it. As long as they give him something to do that's meaningful, let's have a fucking plan. Because I felt
they don't even have to give him anything to do. He'll get himself over.
He'll probably get himself over because he has enough personality. He'll come out. He'll throw those chancletas in the air, and they might be it. He might be good to go.
He has a nice entrance. He has a chant, which is cheating.
Yeah.
Coming in with a chant is cheat code.
Yeah,
he'll be fine.
I think it's cool. Like we talked about before, though, it would have been nice if these guys, we couldn't plan something out for the In Your House takeover and have these guys lose on a big show and then show up the next day or whatever, the next Friday or whatever on the show. Yeah, I mean that probably could have been done better,
I
but
would love Matt Riddle to show up with a crowd, though.
yeah,
I would love to get that pop if he shows up with a
that would have
crowd.
been nice, but it's
What
not
can we
happening.
do?
And
But
friends.
you know what we're
Yeah.
forgetting, guys? You know what we're forgetting? All these shows that are not in front of crowds are gonna have to come back. So those crowds that didn't get to see whatever Matt Hardy or Matt Riddle on the main roster or FTR or Brody Lee, those fans still have to experience that first time in front of a crowd, right?
It's
Brody
true.
Lee's first time in front of an AEW crowd is still important. It's still gonna be a thing.
Yeah.
Same thing with Matt Riddle just came up. And he's gonna go to SmackDown, and he'll probably have to do a month or whatever with no crowd, or 2 months. Who knows? Who knows how long it'll take? But eventually, the fans are gonna show up one day, and that's a big deal. And as long as they make it a big deal, and they realize, let's plan this out correctly. This is gonna be Matt Riddle, and we're gonna present him as a big star. Let's take advantage of this. The fans are gonna see him for the first time. Fans are gonna be hyped. They're still gonna be hyped, even though they've seen it
that's
on
true.
TV.
I mean, I'm more of the perspective that with these two guys, I get it. Riddle, it was announced that Riddle's going to SmackDown. From what I've read, Dijakovic more than likely is going to be heading over to Monday Night Raw. The deal is with both of these guys is that, in all honesty, their final matches, I know it always seems cliche because in NXT, usually the goodbye, the swan song is usually always a takeover. But I think that like I said, in the previous video, that cool cage match that Thatcher and Riddle had, that match should have been happening this weekend at the In Your House show. In all honesty, when I think of Dijakovic, Dijakovic would have probably been a good first opponent for Killer Cross, and have Killer Cross go over on him, because again, I love the idea of seeing Ciampa against Killer Cross. I just don't know if Ciampa's the right first opponent for him. So probably a guy like Dijakovic would have been a good opponent to have, where it could have been a semi-competitive match, but it's still going to be more of a one-sided affair. I think Riddle's going to be great on SmackDown, because SmackDown there's so much good talent on the SmackDown show that adding Riddle to it, it's going to be cool. I just keep thinking in my mind, Matt Riddle versus Sheamus, Matt Riddle versus AJ Styles, Matt Riddle against Cesaro, Matt Riddle against Shinsuke Nakamura. Like there's an endless supply of good matches. I mean, Riddle against Daniel Bryan, against Drew Gulak. I mean, I could just go on and on. They just have so many good guys to work with Riddle that Riddle's going to have no issues on SmackDown at all in terms of competition. With Dijakovic going to Raw, I think if Dijakovic goes on his own and continues doing a similar presentation to what he did on NXT, it's going to fall flat. The one thing I keep thinking to myself is it's either, and I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, man, if I had to plant an idea for Dominic Dijakovic, is either I put him in Seth Rollins' group as the Muscle, or I put him in the babyface group fighting against him as like an equalizer type. Then the 3-on-2, then Dijakovic shows up and says, all right, I got this. And then he, so either way, I think that might be the best landing spot for him to be on Raw and to be presented in the best light, because, again, even though, tonight on Raw, Rollins lost to Aleister Black, and what was a fun match? It was a long match. It was a fun match. It's just, so all the guys in the, Aleister Black, Humberto Carrillo, Austin Theory,
Murphy.
and Buddy Murphy, all four of those guys are being elevated just by working with Rollins. And the thing about it is with Rollins is that he's not big leaguing the guys, meaning when you see them all together, it doesn't look like Seth Rollins is such a megastar and these guys are just a bunch of job guys. They're all looking, little by little, they're all looking to be at the same level. And that's really a great maturation. So if you add Dijakovic to that mix, whether on the babyface or the heel side, that might be his best landing spot on Raw.
Yeah, I like that.
If and when he shows up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all can agree that both Austin Theory and Buddy Murphy automatically became like instantly became cooler. Just being seen with they changed their gear and they got confident out of nowhere, and they seemed like bigger stars. Um, and they announced the finals, right, for the IC title.
Yes, sir.
But we're gonna have what apparently has already been filmed, and it's critically acclaimed apparently, but we won't know till we see it ourselves. But we have AJ Styles against Daniel Bryan. Two of the best workers of our, of this generation.
Thank you very much.
That right there, boys and girls, is the greatest wrestling match ever.
If they did it at Mania, if they did it at Mania for a major title and let it go last, they would fucking knock it out of the. They would do more than that. It would have a legit.
They would
chance.
never. Not as long as
they probably wouldn't.
The Beast is alive.
But remember, there's gonna come a time. There's gonna come a time where Randy's too old. Taker is probably officially, gone and retired. Maybe not. Maybe he might never retire. Or Triple H can't go anymore. And WWE likes to use their old stars. And there's gonna come a time where AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan are gonna be the old stars.
But that's when
they might have a main event chance, when they're both 45 and 42 and 42, maybe 5 years from now, maybe they'll throw him they'll throw him a bone. And are you guys excited for this?
AJ Styles is rapidly approaching that age. He's 42. He's rapidly approaching.
Yeah, but he looks shit. He works like he's 32.
He looks phenomenal. Pardon the pun.
He looks exactly the same. He looks better, His physique was better when he was young, but everything else looks better now.
No,
he's still athletically. He looks the same. He moves the same.
He does everything.
I think it would the
and
one
you too.
The one thing that there's a couple of things with both of these guys, because I remember Daniel Bryan when he wrestled, in Ring of Honor and he worked in other indies. He was much smaller, so he's put on probably about 15-20 pounds of muscle. But even then, it looks totally natural to his body, and he still works the guy's just fluid. He's fantastic. With AJ Styles, the one thing that I will say is that I enjoy AJ Styles' work so much more today than I did when he was in TNA. Only because in TNA, although he did all these really cool moves and he was super athletic, but the psychology was not there. A lot of it was just trying to do all these cool spots, and him and all these guys just doing a bunch of cool spots. And I'm like, tell a story. I think the only time that I would ever see AJ really tell a story is when he worked against Samoa Joe, because he had to, because Joe's so much bigger that he couldn't, Joe's not going to be able to do, quadruple somersaults off the top rope. Like, that's not Joe's game. Joe was more of a ground game, even though he, especially at that time, he could fly through the ropes, and he was very graceful for a guy, 260 pounds, but he was not, he's not going to work that kind of match. AJ now he could still do all the really super athletic things, but the thing is, it's so much more judicious, and it, and working, going to Japan and, spending that time in Japan really helped him, because it developed a personality, and, he's got, he uses some of that Japanese strong style. He works it really well. He incorporates it with his high flying stuff, with the American catch stuff, and it's a really, really fantastic package. So anytime you give me Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles any day of the week,
please,
you got me. So
yeah,
we're all good.
Well, wrestling prime is like 35. Before you might figure it out athletically, but to figure it out mentally as well takes some time.
Right.
And I think about AJ. I was a big TNA fan, and I remember AJ, and I saw him live a couple times, and there was always something missing, even besides the work. His character, there was something, a confidence. He wasn't sure. He would cut these promos, and he found it was like, damn, I wish he didn't talk. The same way I feel about like Apollo Crews. It's like, damn, when he talks, it ruins the package. Yeah. And then I remember right when he was about to leave TNA, and he started wearing his hair down and dry, and the leather jacket. He changed his music, and all of a sudden something clicked right when he was on the way out the door, and I was like, shit, he's about to be like he's figured it out. Fine, like all that time, eventually you figure it out if you keep putting in the work, and that's what he did.
Well, I mean, and especially knowing at the time, the reasons behind his leaving TNA, there were some issues with the office, and I'm sure that all of those things, it was basically, I don't like say, it was basically AJ Styles taking real life and bringing it into the performance art, and then that's when he was able to start. That was the beginning stages of him figuring it out as a wrestling personality. Then when he got to New Japan, you know, then that's when the pieces kind of really came together, And the thing was, it's such a blessing for the United States audience that AJ Styles and WWE were able to work out a contract, because in all honesty, for the fans of New Japan doesn't have the distribution in the United States. So AJ Styles, had he stayed in New Japan, he would be doing his best work, and a very small audience would be seeing it. Versus being in WWE, no matter at times, good, bad, whatever about WWE's creative, but his work is solid no matter what. And that's the reason why, having the biggest global audience to watch, it's such a blessing, because now at this point in his career, where he is, he's got the physical tools, now he got the mental tools, he got the character, he got everything together, and now he's on the largest worldwide platform to be able to show that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't have to go through all the BS that Daniel had to go through early. They gave him the keys to the Ferrari right away. They put some respect on his name right away.
There's a reason for that.
He just took off from there.
There's a reason for that. I'll let Vic talk, but
No, wait. Let me hear your reason first before I say what I have to.
I think the reason for that is that when Daniel Bryan first came to the WWE, the Daniel Bryan that we see today is it's like the Daniel Bryan that first came to the WWE is a mere shadow of the Daniel Bryan that we see today. What I mean by that is the technical in-ring skill was always there. So that, that's not anything that anybody had to argue about. But if you think about Daniel Bryan, when was it that he was in that god-awful NXT show that used to air on the Sci-Fi Channel? What year was that? 2010?
It was around there.
So, for just humor me. Let's just say it was 2010. I don't know the exact dates. But what you saw there was the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, trying to fit into WWE, whereas the only training that he was just his design as a performer is, I want to be the best wrestler in the world. Now, when you're the best wrestler in the world, but your personality is very small, meaning that outside of the bell-to-bell stuff, there isn't anything about your look or your personality or anything about you that is going to draw attention to an audience to say, I want to look at you. Then it draws a very small audience. Now, do I think that WWE at certain points, particularly Michael Cole on commentary, was very disrespectful? Yes, I do. But at the same time, that may have been WWE's way of saying, we're going to try to get this guy over by basically dissing him on commentary. I didn't get it. I didn't like it, especially because I knew his work, particularly from Ring of Honor. But at the same time, I was able to recognize that I was like, WWE are really taking the low road here, but they're technically not wrong. Because
even when he forced their hand, because he did force their hand, they were still hesitant. And it's one of those things where Vic always says, like, get yourself over. And unfortunately, he did it time and time again, and they still wouldn't hand him the keys to the car.
I will say this. I mean, unfortunately for Daniel Bryan, especially when he at WrestleMania 30, when he won, and he had that big moment at WrestleMania 30. Unfortunately, when whatever his injuries and everything took him down, that was really something unfortunate, because that was like the hottest that he had ever been, and to this day he hasn't been able to recoup that. His matches are still great. He's still looked at very highly by the WWE office and by the fans, and I'm sure that all the wrestlers look at him very highly as well. So it's a matter of you know, can he get back to that level?
No
Partly,
one can. That's
well,
top 5 run of all time.
well, I will say this though,
That might be behind Austin and Hogan.
under
Shit.
under the right circumstances, I think it can be done. It's just a matter that the thing is, it can't be an artificial situation, because that situation was so organic from the fans, and WWE finally, after God knows how long, they finally gave the fans what they wanted. And I mean,
there's no replicating that at all.
just think about what WrestleMania 30 would have looked like had this whole thing with Daniel Bryan not happened and The Undertaker loses to Brock Lesnar. That would have been the biggest Debbie Downer of a WrestleMania.
Oh gosh.
You know, so again, it's like you got to take your ups and your downs. And sometimes when you're a promotion, I've always been of the opinion that as much as the fans matter, because they're a direct, they're giving you direct feedback. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, as a promotion, that you always have to accommodate to that. There are moments where you might have.
I prefer they don't.
Yeah,
I hate when fans vote for the All-Star players in the NBA. I hate it. Fans don't know shit.
Baseball, yeah, because it's a popularity contest. But
yeah,
but at the end of the day, there are moments where you should listen, because depending on the performer, depending on how organic this is, and if you as the promotion think that, hey, if we go with this, we can see this, making money, because at the end of the day, you're in business to make money. So, the same thing with Daniel Bryan, then with Kofi Kingston. These were organic things that happened, and WWE went with it, and in both instances were successful for the time that they were utilized. So, again, that's with Daniel Bryan, a lot of it is the guy that you see in 2020, and I think that even Daniel Bryan himself would tell you that, when I first came to WWE, I was ill prepared. Technically I was ready to be here, but from a persona, character, the full package that makes a WWE superstar, he wasn't ready.
I wouldn't be surprised if that moment that I talked about earlier, where AJ Styles had that like whatever, that moment where he just figured it out and everything clicked. That aha moment. Same thing happened to Daniel Bryan, because when I first started watching Daniel Bryan, I used to argue with people. I hate this guy. He's so boring. I don't like listening to him. It doesn't matter what he does in the ring if I'm so bored with his character. And I don't know what happened, but the Daniel Bryan you see today is damn near perfect. This guy can do it all. Babyface, heel, cut promos better than a lot of people. He's very comfortable. Has complete control of the crowd. I would have never imagined that, based on the Daniel Bryan we were introduced in 2009.
2009. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
But another thing, sometimes we talk about guys, they weren't pushed or they weren't given opportunities. Like CM Punk, was always complaining about not getting this, not getting that, whatever. Or, Daniel Bryan doesn't necessarily complain. But if you go back and try to remember, these guys were put in pretty prominent spots. Like Daniel Bryan won a title pretty quick. He won a Money in the Bank really early on, before he was even fully over. It's like, fuck it. I don't know how that happened. I'm trying to think of it now. Maybe they did like him. Maybe they did like what they saw. Maybe they didn't see him as the face of the company, but they were using him. Same thing with CM Punk. CM Punk complains about all this bullshit. You go back and look at his accolades and you're like, what the fuck? What is all of this cool shit that they made you do or they let you do?
I think, sometimes in the position with CM Punk, I think that his complaint is that he wanted to be the guy, the main event. And I will say this, even though at the time CM Punk was way hot and way over, but, and again I say but, he was only over with the wrestling audience. And again, when you're, and then I go back to my whole disposition about mainstream audience. If you go to the casual fan who may peripherally know WWE, peripherally know pro wrestling, and you mention the name CM Punk, you may get the who? But if you say The Rock, if you say Brock Lesnar, if you say John Cena, if you say Hulk Hogan, you say, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, those kinds of names, they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember them from XYZ era. And I think that was the thing that probably angered Punk, because Punk was like, hey, I'm the man right now, and I should be main eventing, and I should be closing out WrestleMania and doing all this stuff. And as much as I can see his point of view, WrestleMania it's not designed for wrestling fans. It's not. WrestleMania is a spectacular. It's like the Super Bowl. People pay money for the Super Bowl a year in advance, and they don't even know who's going to play. They just show up and say it's an event.
I was there.
I was there. It's kind of the same thing with WrestleMania. And the thing is, when you're trying to present that to a mainstream audience, CM Punk is not going to register the same way as the other names that I just mentioned, for better or for worse. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that when you're looking at it from a mainstream, who are these guys? That's where the rubber meets the road. And again, this is where I've always said that this is WWE's fault, and they need to do a better job of making some fantastic wrestlers that they have on their roster that are known worldwide by wrestling fans, to make them household names to a mainstream audience, to where they are now the stars, and you don't need to keep relying on the names of yesteryear to keep coming back and bringing star power to shows where you got, the best wrestlers in the world are already in your locker room. Let them go out and let them be the mega stars, and let them be the ones that draw the crowds and draw everything for you.
Yeah, I mean, with CM Punk, those, that little run he had, it was just bad timing, right? Because if you have Rock Cena, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing anyone can do, really, because there's really nothing anyone can do to surpass that, unless it's Austin and somebody as big as Cena, and there was no one as big as Cena. So it was like, good luck. But at the same time, Lou, you pretty much, I don't think CM Punk, I think he should have main evented every show up until Mania. And Mania should have been the way it went. Cena and Rock, because you just can't top that. But you did make an argument without knowing for CM Punk main eventing, because
I know
the Super Bowl sells out a year in advance. It's the same thing with WrestleMania. People don't give a fuck who's going to be there or not be there. If you're going to Mania, you're going to Mania, and you have it planned way in advance. And you go to Mania for Mania. The show sells itself. It's going to be 70,000, 80,000 people, and we're going to lie anyway and say it was 95,000. It's all good.
Oh, no, you're right about that. But
it's the best show ever.
But here's the deal. Here's the deal with that. The thing about WrestleMania is that pretty much WrestleMania every year, it's a sold show for WWE, because they, in all honesty, at this point, WWE no longer has to promote WrestleMania, because pretty much they just say, okay, WrestleMania is on XYZ date, XYZ city, XYZ football stadium. Boom, it sells out. As soon as those tickets go up, within 24 hours, all those tickets are gone. So that's not the issue. The issue becomes is when WWE has to promote it, and they're promoting it to mainstream media. You got to understand that in the era of, like, particularly in the Hulk Hogan era, in the rock and wrestling era, Hulk Hogan was the biggest star in wrestling. So WWE didn't have to, try to plug here and plug there. It's not like, oh, we need to get Bruno or we need to get, whoever. No, we got Hulk Hogan. He's the biggest star in the business. Then during, some of the drier years, that's where they experimented with, Nash and Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. And, they experimented with the wrestling people. But then you saw that the crowd, they were working in smaller arenas. The pay-per-view buys were not as great. And then what ends up happening once they got to the Austin era, when he got hot with Tyson, all of a sudden numbers go way up. Now you got your megastar. That megastar now you have all the guys underneath. The Rock, Triple H, I hate to say Undertaker, because for me to think Undertaker's underneath, but all those guys. Then The Rock bubbled himself up to be a Hollywood megastar. So now if The Rock becomes available, and you can give The Rock a call and say, hey, are you okay with working WrestleMania? And he says, Yeah, Vince, sure. What are you going to do? He's the main event, my man. He's
Sorry.
the main event. Because when you say The Rock, and then the people who, they're like, oh, who's The Rock? And then they see mainstream, oh, that's Dwayne Johnson. That's the guy from XYZ movie. It's to promote it to mainstream media. Understood that if it was just for wrestling fans, then yeah, CM Punk can main event because it's a sold show. You got 75, 80,000 people there. It's a sold show. If CM Punk is the hottest act for the company, then he's going to be main eventing. But of course, that's not how it works for WrestleMania. And that's where WWE has to do a better job of making their wrestling stars more mainstream so that the wrestlers themselves are the mainstream megastars, and that you don't have to rely on aging stars that every year get older and older. And even though people know who they are, but the matches are not getting any better and they're not getting any younger.
The
So
unfortunate thing for this is that if CM Punk comes back, he plugs in, and now he becomes the person that he was arguing against. That's the unfortunate part, that now he's The Rock. And now he has the main Evania, and now he's hurting someone else. So he's putting his foot in his mouth.
What's the Jay-Z line, Chris? Something about a hero, live long enough, whatever, and you become the villain?
It was the Batman line. Yeah, that's the Batman line. I don't remember it, but yeah, it's from Batman.
Yeah, well, now CM Punk is the same person that he hated. If he was to come back, he is The Rock. Yep. you know?
He may, but you know what? I think that if he comes back and he's in that spot, I think that he'll have a different perspective, and hopefully then, if someone were to ask him honestly, he may have a different perspective on how he felt all those years ago about, oh, I should be the main event, and then he'd have a different understanding of how WWE's business works and why he was he was always viewed as one of the top matches on the show, but he wasn't the match of the show, the closeout match. And I think that that's what he wanted. And in all honesty, for WrestleMania, even though the closeout show is always important, it's not the most important thing, because sometimes you could be the third match on the card and then nobody else can follow you. Look up Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 25. I don't know why they came on like third or fourth in the card, and I was like, this is the main event. Why is this coming on now? And pretty much every other match that followed that, it looked like amateur hour by comparison. It looked like these were the pros and then everybody else is a talent show. That's no disrespect to them. It's just a matter that match was so good and all the elements were told so perfectly. I was like, no match should go after this one, because this is the match. And it kind of ruined the rest of the show, in all honesty. But then they got it right the following year, and that match wasn't as good as the first one. So